Man, it is good to see this thing running and moving under its own power. But you already knew that because you saw it in the last video. We got this thing running for the first time with its Terminator fully forged heart. Slapped a full heat exchanger slash intercooler system in this thing, put the drive shaft in, hooked up the gear selector, and backed this thing out of the garage under its own power. And that's pretty much where we left off. You guys haven't missed anything, but there's still quite a bit left to do before we get to actually drive this thing, which I'd like to do in this video. So we're gonna jump right into it. Real quick merch update though, you guys. Tanks are live on the website, so you can get yours, just like the best-selling logo shirt. Really clean Sullivan & Company logo on the front, nothing on the back, premium quality tank. Lose the sleeves, show off those hairy shoulders if you got them like I do, or, you know, if you got normal shoulders with no hair on them. You're gonna look great no matter what. Get yourself the Sullivan & Co. tank, live on the website, everything from small all the way up to 3XL. Got you guys covered. All right, let's get into this thing. Well, I've spent a little bit of time cleaning up the garage, but all of my wiring stuff is still out, and I would love to get that cleaned up. So first order of business, I think I wanna clean up this temporary wiring that I did to get the alternator to work and also to feed back in to keep our battery light off. So I'm gonna attempt to clean up all that. I think we know that our fuel rail pressure sensor is good, so I can loom this stuff. Basically just clean up all of our wiring. And then while this stuff is out, I also wanna get into some gauges here. So all this stuff, minus this one, came with the car. These were just laying in the driver's floorboard, and you can actually see one of these in a video that the previous owner sent me when the car was still running with the Vortec during the tuning process. That's how far he got before this thing blew up, was the gauges were still installed by his feet. But we got a wideband, a boost gauge, and fuel pressure gauge. So all this came with the car. We got some assorted, lighting stuff and adapters and the fuel pressure sending unit. All that came with the car. I bought this oil pressure gauge. And I know what you guys are thinking. Hey Chris, those two gauges down by the shifter, oil pressure and voltage. So why do you need an oil pressure gauge? Quick story time, let me learn on you. Yeah, so these guys down here, this is arguably my favorite part of the Marauder interior. This was bone stock back in 03 and 04. Two Autometer Pro Comp ultralight gauges in basically your grandpa's Crown Vic. I mean, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Volt gauge works perfectly, works exactly as it should. As fancy as this Autometer oil pressure gauge is, this is not your average Autometer oil pressure gauge. That gauge was actually specially made for Ford for this car, and just like most Ford vehicles from this era, the Cobras included, Mustangs, everything like that, it's a switch. It's not an actual gauge, it's a dummy light. Anything over 6 psi, I think, of oil pressure, and this thing reads like 50 or 60 pounds of oil pressure. The reason Ford did that was, and did this on a lot of vehicles, the sending unit or the gauges will say normal. Just all the way in the middle, it just says normal. It doesn't tell you what it is, it just says normal. The reason they did that is because they were getting too many calls from customers saying, hey, my oil pressure's 20 psi and it was 80 psi. There's something wrong with my car. So that, the service calls were out of control because people didn't understand that oil pressure varies based on temperature and, engine RPM and all this other stuff. So Ford just said, screw that, let's just make it read 60 psi all the time and eliminate all these service calls. So that's great if you're the average grandpa driving your Marauder or Crown Vic, but for, a performance-oriented setup like we have now, we want an actual oil pressure gauge. So I think I'm gonna swap out this gauge, and I was gonna leave this one, but now I'm thinking we're out of room, and I gotta do something here too. So let me get some of this stuff unboxed and organized, and show you what I got, and then we'll talk about a little bit about what the plan is here. I'm used to frameless windows. wait. Yep, you guys guessed it. We are putting 6 gauges in this car. The more gauges, the better. No, we're not doing that. But we are gonna have some. And it's not gonna be these 2, it's actually gonna be 3 in this factory pod down here. This thing is super cool, by the way. You know, I'm gonna pull these things out and we'll take a look at them. But there's your factory Ford part number. I'm curious to see if these odometer gauges are, you know, have any Ford stamping on them. But again, to the outside, untrained eye, they look like your regular gauges, but then they come with these OEM style connectors on the back, so super cool. A popular Marauder mod is to get a 3rd gauge here and replace this cigarette lighter, which I'm not going to use, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a second. But what guys will do is they'll get one of these odometer bezels that kind of angles it to the side. Boop, pop that on there. And then you can get a 3rd gauge of your choice. But in my case, I think we're gonna get rid of both of these, and I'm gonna do boost, oil pressure, or boost, fuel pressure, and oil pressure. So we'll have 3 matching odometer gauges down here. And then the wideband, I think if I flip this thing over to the other side, it'll be white face. And then we can swap on this silver face that came with it, so it'll match these 2. I think I'm gonna put this with the extra bezel that I have here. I think I might pop this guy right in there or something. You know, I thought about putting it up here or, you know, somewhere else, but this is a Marauder specific piece and I feel like I would feel guilty cutting into this. So that's reason number 1. And number 2, I really don't want this to seem like a full-on race car here. It's still, you know, your grandpa's car. Even if it does have 600 horsepower, I don't want gauges, you know, everywhere looking like they weren't there from the factory. Because some of you guys might be screaming, hey, why don't you put it in one of those pillar pod things? You know, this came with the car. This is clearly what the previous owner's intention was, is to put up one of these. And, you know, there's all your gauges. You get the 2 down by the shifter and then boost, fuel pressure, and wideband right in this thing. And these things work in certain cars. I had one in the Cobra. I think that works, but it just, to me, it screams like race car, which is not the vibe I'm going for here. I'm going for sleeper. Like, when I'm done with this thing, I want it to look mostly factory with a couple little touches that a keen eye might notice. You know, like me and you might notice. But I don't want gauges all down the pillar and, you know, stuff that's gonna make it seem like someone modded this car until you pop the hood. So someone else can use this. I think I'm gonna put the 3 gauges there, see if we can kind of hide the wideband in the center console there, which I hopefully won't feel guilty drilling into because I think it's the same as on the, you know, Crown Vics and stuff. And then I also have one of these leftover voltmeter / charging ports here. So I think I'm gonna try and find a spot like over here or maybe somewhere else in the center console to, you know, that we can use to charge our phone and whatnot. I don't smoke. I hope that no one else will ever smoke in this car, so I don't have a reason to have an actual cigarette lighter, even though it looks like someone might have used it at one point. It certainly doesn't smell like that in the car, but that will also solve 2 problems. It will give us back our charging capabilities and also replace the voltage gauge that we're getting rid of. So here's the oil pressure gauge I bought. It comes with a sending unit, and because of the tight quarters down by the oil filter adapter, I had to buy one of these 45s that I think will angle this absolutely massive sending unit off to one side. I don't know why. If someone knows why the sending units for oil pressure, you know, things have to be so large, let me know. Look at the fuel pressure one for size comparison. Why do the oil pressure ones have to be so big? I don't get it, but anyways, I think I have everything I need here to get a sweet set of gauges in this Marauder that hopefully looks somewhat factory and then is going to give us all the vitals that we need on our fully forged terminal. But we're not gonna get anything done if we don't stop talking, so let's dive into it. Factory or not? Who knows? That is the goal of this whole build. OEM plus, make it look like this could have come this exact way from the factory, and that is going to carry into the interior. Super happy with how this came out. A little bit of cutting, a little bit of Dremel work, and we've got 3 aftermarket autometer gauges that are going to give us actual useful information, and to me, still looks totally factory. We got boost all the way on the left, then fuel pressure, and then an actual oil pressure gauge mounted with the autometer bezel there. Look at this. All 3 of them line up absolutely perfectly like it was meant to be there. Way more useful than a cigarette lighter. And there was an additional cigarette lighter in the center console. So I popped this little thing off, popped that off, and put in one of these USB chargers and voltmeters, the same one I have in the Lightning, as I mentioned. So now I not only have a way to monitor voltage, but also can still charge my devices. So we really haven't lost anything here. We've actually gained a bunch of useful gauges and added a wideband gauge. And to me, this still looks mostly factory. This one, of course, I guess that's up for debate, but I think it looks clean enough and kind of matches with the, the dual autometer gauges that Ford or Mercury did from the factory. It turns out I don't have a white face and a silver bezel for this, so I got one of those on the way from Holley, and this thing is ready to go in. But I mean, we can still fit both drinks in here. Again, the idea is we haven't lost anything, and now we've got our air fuel right down here on the center console, and didn't have to drill anything into the dash or, do anything too obvious. Here's the back of the factory Ford gauges. Looks like regular autometer from the front, but then has an OEM style harness on the back. What's interesting is they came with a blue light. You'd think that it would have been the green one, which is like, what you see on all the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s Fords. That's what I did for these 3 here. So now all that's left to do is wire and plumb this all up. I've got an adapter here, a 90-degree adapter from Earl's, which I got from my friends over at Holley. Reason for that is I wanted this fuel pressure sender, instead of sticking up like this and the wiring, being kind of up here, just wanted to switch this over that way so it's a little bit more clean, a little bit more hidden. Once again, maybe looks a little bit factory. Boost gauge ZZ, that's just vacuum lines. The fuel pressure wiring is already run through the firewall from the previous owner. Oil pressure, they just give you this giant sender and then you're responsible for the rest of the wiring, which is shown here. It's pretty easy, just one ground, one wire to the sender, and then a switch 12-volt source, which we already have right down here from the original gauges. Put temporary power to my wideband, still works just fine. So again, that is also run through the floor or the firewall, so that should be pretty easy to hook up as well. A little bit of wiring, a little bit of plumbing, no big deal. Let's do it, let's make it clean, let's make it look like it came that way. Look at that. Perfect match to that Ford green. Love that. There we are. All wired up, plumbed up, ready to go. Do not want to listen to that beeping anymore, but man, the shifter even hides. This is the best part. The shifter hides this third gauge when it's in park, and then if you pull it into drive, you can see all three gauges perfectly, plus the wideband. Still looks factory. Goal accomplished. I am super happy with that. Yeah, looks really, really good. And all of our vitals are here and actually are gonna work well. Boost, fuel, oil pressure, and wideband. And I think I'm gonna switch this. Let me know what you guys think. Should I keep this black so it blends in a little bit, or I kind of want it to be silver with a white face just so all four gauges match, but really, really clean. So gauges, done. Boost gauge, ZZ, Like I said, this was already run through the firewall, simple connection there. The fuel pressure stuff was already run through a grommet in the firewall, so I just had to loom that. Got my adapter on there. Forgot I had to run one of these like 16th inch to 8th inch NPT adapter and then the 90, but that still looks a lot better than this sticking up here and then the wiring kind of going like that. No leaks, fuel pressure gauge works. We got 40 PSI with the turn of the key, and then the oil pressure sender. Ran a wire through down to the sender down there, which is that silver guy right there, which is a real pain to get to. And hopefully we have no leaks. But again, loomed the wire, looks all factory down there, and everything works. Normally I would start this thing up. Well, actually the last thing we have to do is screw in the wideband O2 sensor. But right now there's nowhere to screw it into, which is a great segue for what's coming next, which is exhaust. So let me get this thing back down on the ground so I can straighten it out, get it back on the lift, and then we'll talk about what's next. Good. Bad. Good. Bad. We got to do something about this. All right, well, to recap, we put beautiful stainless works long tube headers on this car, representative of the caliber and quality of the build that we're going for here. The car used to have, I think there were Cobra manifolds down to, I believe, a modified stock X pipe. And then it comes back into where it gets kind of bad. So I think that from the factory, the Marauder is like 2 or 2 1/4 inch pipe. This is like 2. And then there's a non-mandrel bend right there that necks down to like 1 3/4. And you got a bunch of adapters and couplers and reducers into what I assume are Flowmasters or Flowmaster knockoffs. And then I think this is the factory over the axle pipe. Someone did some sort of adapter here, and then these are the factory Marauder exhaust tips. You can tell that because of that little baffle inside. So obviously we got to do something about all this. Could I spend probably weeks fabricating all that from scratch? Yeah, probably. Do I want to do that? Absolutely not. This platform, the Crown Vic platform, is not super common to modify, and they only made 11,000 Marauders, so there's not a huge market for these. So there's only one company that really makes a catback exhaust for these, and of course, it's Stainless Works. And Stainless Works stuff is super nice. Not at all sponsored. I paid full price for those headers, but it's pricey. The catback for this car is like $1,800, and of course it's beautiful, has all 304 stainless, all that, but not only is it super expensive, but it's also, I think, like a 6 or 8 week lead time. So I should have ordered it a long time ago, but I didn't, so I started looking around for other options, and here's what I come up with. Boom. Here's what we're working with, starting at the front, just a generic 2.5 inch eBay China Chinesium X pipe. It is 409 stainless, so it should be pretty nice, and obviously it's going to resist corrosion. which it shouldn't really anyways, because I don't think this car is ever going to be driven in the winter again. But anyways, 409 stainless, 2.5 inch X-pipe. And then I hit up my friends at Holley for a set of Flowmaster Flow FX mufflers. These are not your typical Flowmaster in that, yep, they're straight through. So we're not going to get really any flow restrictions there, but this should, I've heard and watched some sound clips, these should have a great tone. These are 409 stainless as well, I believe. And then I could have also struggled to fabricate 2.5 inch mandrel bend or pie cut bend over the axle pipes. But with a lot of digging on the internet, God bless the person on Facebook or whatever group that I found that figured out that like 66 Impala, I don't remember what body that is, an A body, their over the axle pipes fit on the Panther cars. So basically, if you get these over the axle pipes, which obviously this would be most of the work making the exhaust right there, right? If you get these over the axle pipes, then you can basically get over the axle, make it out to your tips, and boom, that's your exhaust. So for much less than $1,800, I should have an awesome stainless steel catback exhaust and X-pipe for this car. Shout out to my friends at Holley for hooking it up with the Flow FX mufflers and these over the axle pipes, which are also made by Flowmaster. So hopefully, if we do this right, you guys with your Panther platform cars can do something similar and have a great sounding exhaust for probably under $500 right here, if you've got a welder and a little bit of time to make it happen. And then of course, I'm hoping I can make these beautiful factory exhaust tips work. I tried to find like a 4-inch tip here, but there's nobody that makes a 4-inch rolled tip that is the full 24 inches long that the Marauder really needs, because you really need to see them under the bumper there. Then of course, if you guys have seen me build an exhaust on the channel, you know we're gonna do 304 stainless V-band clamps, and then I bought some stainless hangers, and then just in case we need it, a 304 stainless piece of straight pipe. Everything else I should be able to get out of the scrap stainless pile over there, and this should be everything we need to get from our headers all the way back to our Marauder tips here. So first things first, let's get the old exhaust cut / removed from the car somehow, and then see if we can start coming up with a plan for this. Let's get after it. well, normally I would say good morning, but it's actually afternoon now. I was out here at 7 a.m. early this morning, knocking some stuff out on my homemade X-Pipe, but now it's afternoon. We're already on to the afternoon iced coffee. A little bit of dunk sky. Over here, we've got whatever disaster of an exhaust used to be on the car off. Looks exactly as you would expect it to for sitting next to a concrete plant or whatever it was for 7 or 8 years in Louisiana, but we are going, well, wait, what is this? Is that factory? What does that say? Megs. Are these the factory tips? Huh. I'll have to look into that. I think they're a 3.5-inch tip, but they're definitely the full Marauder length. Either way, we're going to be reusing these tips, so we'll get these cleaned up in a moment. Over here, you can see I've got my X-Pipe all mocked up. Welded some V-bands onto those Stainless Works extensions there. Got the X mocked up here, tacked in there. Had to cut a little bit off this rear section to get these to flare out a little bit. Got a killer gap here I'm gonna have to fill in, so looking forward to that. But if we have to get out the hot metal glue gun, AKA MIG welder, we will do that if we have to. But X-Pipe is looking sweet so far. Also got the Flowmaster tailpipes mocked up. Shout out to the guy that figured out that these fit, because I think that these are going to be basically drop in, which is going to save me a huge amount of time. At this point, I think I'm going to stop at the X-Pipe and transition to the back of the car, because I want to get the tips in the right spot, then link them up with the tailpipes here, and then those are going to drop somewhere right about here, right by the differential. And then at that point, by the time we get the muffler in there, we only have 8-10 inches to fill in there. So I want to basically get the exhaust built to here, and then we'll build a pipe to go, you know, from there to there. So gonna now start at the back of the car and then build forward, and we're gonna meet in the middle here at the X-Pipe. Might have to get creative with some of the factory hangers here. I don't know how easy those are gonna be to get to, but we'll figure it out. We got all the tools we need here, so let's keep going. Well, everyone knows the most important step to a custom exhaust system is a brand new fuel pump. No, it's not. Just another case of while you're in there. Shirts on the website, while you're in there cafe. Burning cash since 2025. More on that in a second. We are making progress on the exhaust. Got the tips cut off of the over axle pipes, which it turns out are not the factory tips. These are a company, Megs, that made aftermarket tips for the Marauder. So these are those massive 24-inch or whatever I was talking about. So maybe you Marauder guys can let me know, or maybe I can look it up. I think the factory tips maybe would have been a 3-inch, because these are 3.5. And they made them in 3.5 and 4-inch versions, baffled and unbaffled. And apparently the previous owner, or one of the previous owners, got them in the baffled version, which I eventually got out, but it took hours and I wasted a whole bunch of time trying to hammer them out because that's how the internet said you could do it. But they are too big to come out the rolled tip end, and they're also too big to come out this end unless you cut them at the widest part, or the OD there. So I had to cut them twice, wasted a bunch of time trying to mangle them and get them out. As you can see, basically wasted an hour with my, with basically every tool I had. Punches, the air hammer that I have to try and mangle this thing out without cutting the exhaust tip again, but it didn't work. So eventually I just cut it off on the next one, and then this thing popped out in like 10 seconds. Bunch of hits with the hammer. Also found out I didn't have to order this pipe because I already had one in the exhaust pipe pile. So just wailed on the end of that and hammered it through. And now we have two pretty mint condition, non-baffled Megs tips. If anyone has the 4-inch version or knows where I could get a 4-inch version of this tip, let me know. Hit me in my DMs. Shoot me an email. So we're making progress there. I already got one of these mocked up. And we are well on our way to basically figuring out where we need to cut this, and then probably get the MIG welder under here just to tack it in. But because we were right there in the somewhat pretty easily accessible Panther platform fuel hat area, check that out. This is basically right where the over the axle pipe was before. So I figured while we're here, we need to tackle the fuel system on this thing anyways. We have no idea, or had no idea, what fuel pump was in this thing. We know that we now need more fuel to support our Eaton supercharger. So I figured let's pull the hat out and see what we got. And I immediately knew that I wasn't the first one in here because of this zip tie here, which probably wouldn't be found on a factory application. And a little bit of research has shown me I think that is true. This Ford part number right here, 3S4U9350AA, comes back to your SVT Focus fuel pump. So this is a common mod for all of these cars back in the day. The Cobras included was running one of these SVT Focus pumps. I think this is the equivalent of your Walboro 255, and you could get these for like 80 bucks back in the day. So common, cheap upgrade. Looks like it was basically a bolt-in, probably the same factory connector. But yeah, good cheap mod. But I didn't know this was in here, and we wanted to make sure. And even if we did, I think we were going to upgrade anyways. You can't quite put a Hellcat pump in these things. The return-less fuel systems are not designed to support that kind of flow. But a really common mod is a 340 pump, because these are about the limit as to what you can run on a returnless style fuel system. This should support all the fuel that we need for our Eaton swap. But while we're here, we might as well throw this in there. You know I got this from my boys over at Holley. They have everything that you need. We already proved that. They got exhaust parts, they got fuel system parts. We got a lot more goodies for this thing coming. Holley is your one-stop shop. The only thing these kits usually don't come with is submersible fuel line. If you guys are putting fuel line in a submersible fuel hat, like most modern EFI cars are, do not use regular fuel line. It will deteriorate. You'll have a no-start condition, or your car will drop fuel pressure at high PSI or high RPM, and you'll blow your motor. Just use submersible fuel line. I had a couple of these things lying around. This is from an old Walboro installation kit. I think this was from my Z06 or something. I don't remember. But if you're putting one of these into one of these, use submersible fuel hose. It's expensive. It's like 20 bucks for like a foot of it. But I mean, do you want to pull the tank again? Yeah, I didn't think so. So quick exhaust project break. Let's switch over to, or transition over to fuel system real quick. Get this AEM 340 pump in this hat. Get the hat back in, get that all sealed back up, and then get back to making this exhaust happen. All right, we are making good progress on the exhaust for the Marauder. Got one side completely mocked up all the way out to the Megs tips. Up over the axle, we got good clearance over everything. Got a V-band here, so this whole mid-pipe section will come down as one. Got our Flowmaster Flow FX muffler in there, and even made up a hanger here using whatever these are, these factory holes here. Used my favorite riv nut tool on both sides and added a place to put a hanger, which falls perfectly where the mufflers are here. So this whole thing is just lightly tacked together, but I'm loving the fitment. Of course, these factory hangers weren't gonna work. I assume the factory mufflers were huge and it probably worked okay, but there's no way a 10-inch hanger over here was gonna do a whole lot of good. So came up with this, and that's gonna be good. Was about to replicate this on the passenger side, but if you notice, I think that's called a Watts link right there. See how one of the arms goes up like that, and then the other one kind of does the reverse? It's just looking at the factory exhaust right there, and this pipe from the factory comes down between the link and the rear end. Over here, it's a lot tighter, so the exhaust goes up and over the link and down here. Those pipes I got are symmetric, and I don't know if the Crown Vics have that link or if people have just done modification work before. I probably could make it work at the ride height the car is at now, which is jacked up in the air, but I'd like to slam this thing on the ground, so I want to make sure that we have enough clearance. And unfortunately what that means is I think I'm going to need to modify that over axle pipe a little bit. And I'm hoping that I get away with just slicing it right in the middle of the bend and adding like 3 inches just to get us up and over this link here. So that's what I'm going to do now. And then once we've got this thing all tacked together, hopefully we can burn it all in, which is now a lot of welds. But we'll see. Also wanted to show you guys this before I take it to the dump. Here's the passenger side. You can see this section is longer to get up over that link. And then here's the driver's side, which we just did. Also, I forgot to show you yesterday, the inside of these Flowmaster mufflers, completely rotted, falling apart. Actually, no, I guess these are knockoffs. There's no Flowmaster on them. And they also sat outside for so many years, but even if we wanted to, these wouldn't have worked. So yeah, plan is all this stuff's going to the scrap pile. Plan is to slice this pipe hopefully right here, add a little bit, and see if we can replicate something like that. So let's get back to it. Tips, baby. Nice and even. Shoo! All right. Whew! This is why I wanted to buy that Stainless Works exhaust. Just so many hours of, fitting stuff and redoing stuff, and you move one thing and then it moves 7 things down the line, and that's just the way that a custom exhaust goes sometimes. But it's done right now. That over the axle quick modification ended up taking a couple hours just to get the fitment right. There's so much stuff to watch out for down there, but it's done. Tips are on, tips are even, perfectly centered, super happy with those. Over here, got the over the axle piece done, just getting those angles right. And then pretty darn symmetric all the way down there, which is great. Not perfectly symmetric over the axle, but the factory exhaust isn't either. And that's because of this Watts link here. It's just, I don't even know if it's pot. I mean, you could probably sit here for a week straight doing pie cuts to make it look symmetric over here, but this is not like the Cobras where you can really see those pipes that go under the axle. So as long as the tips are straight and looking good, which they are, I'm happy. We should have clearance everywhere to hopefully slam this thing on the ground if we wanted to. We got clearance to the airbags back here. I might have to reroute this differential breather, but that's no big deal, or zip tie it somewhere. I was gonna have to mess with this brake line, or this e-brake line. I'm not gonna have to do that anymore because of our modification up here. We got plenty of clearance there, plenty of clearance to the axle here. But yeah, looking good down there. We are fully tacked together. Now comes the part where take it all apart, TIG weld it all together, hope that nothing moves. Just probably gonna be hours of me sticking and moving, but you know, at least it's kind of mindless compared to what it takes to put together a custom exhaust. So let me clean up a little bit. Hopefully the weather cools down a little bit. It's hot. Take a little break, and then we'll get right to welding. Hopefully get this exhaust finished up. Just let some air, or all the air, out of the bags basically. Got this thing really far down in the rear, probably lower than we would ever have it. Gave it a couple bounces. You're gonna hear some noise from the lift over there, but other than that, nothing's hitting, nothing's rubbing. So everywhere from all the way extended to slam down, we have a clearance on our exhaust. We're good to weld it up. Let's do it. What? I've been trying to finish this welding for hours, getting absolutely nothing done. There's always plane traffic on this channel if you've been around for a while. And I'm a fan of most of it, but this is on another level. Keep running out here like a 5-year-old kid. Progress is ground to a halt. Both welders going. Whew, gotta get this done. wasn't gonna drink tonight, but it's been one of those days. And it's Friday Junior. Happy Friday Junior. Which means tomorrow's Friday, which means it's dyno day. And this thing still needs, I don't know, a decent amount. But we're able to check a big one off the list. Exhaust, finally done, and what a project it was. 24 hours ago, I started welding, finished welding. Welded for a few hours last night till late night, and then a few hours today in between my real job and the Blue Angels, which were distracting me. So sick, can't wait to watch them this weekend. Anyways, exhaust is completely done, finished welded, started with the whole X-pipe section, was able to TIG weld the entire thing, except for these two joints right here. This is where those huge gaps were. I started TIGging it and it was just putting a ton of heat into it and it was a huge waste of time. So I said, screw it, got out the old hot glue gun, MIG welder, did that, and then put some nice silver paint on there just to make sure that nothing rusts. Everything else is TIG welded. Then fit that up, made sure everything was still good. This thing fits perfectly. Then moved back here to the rear pipes, which really just needed the welds to re-weld where I got the baffle out. This is all TIGged, and then same thing here. I had to MIG weld this because there was big gaps up here. Just the way that I cut the tips, unfortunately. But again, this is all stainless, and the stuff that's not is painted. So should be good to go. The only thing that really kind of screwed me and ate up over an hour of time was this right here. I think that when I was removing this pipe to weld it, I only had 2 tacks on this piece and this piece there. It must have hit on one of these things and bent it, and then I finished weld the whole thing, put it all back together, and there was a big gap in the V-bands. So basically what I did was sliced it down right here, spread it out, got it to fit, tacked it in again, pulled it out again, and then put in like a pie-shaped piece right here to fill that in, and then just, you know, went to town with the MIG. And it looks pretty terrible, but it's what we have right now. The dyno's tomorrow. Again, painted it. We can grind and paint this and clean it up a little better later down the road. But for right now, it fits perfectly, finally, and is going to be leak-free. But that's just one of those things where you thought you were done with the project. I'd already started putting my tools and my welder and stuff away, get to the last band clamp here, and there's just a 1/4 or a 1/2 inch up top here that is never going to seal. Well, get out the tools again. But the exhaust is done. From the Stainless Works headers to the 2.5 inch stainless X-pipe, all the way to the Flowmaster mufflers, boom, all the way out to our 3.5 inch Megs tailpipes. Done. Built from scratch. Yours truly. Hopefully it sounds good, which we'll find out, I think, at this point tomorrow morning. I'm going to actually start filming the dyno video because there's still a few things left we have to do before that. And then I have to actually go outside right now and do some yard work, which I haven't done in a while. So I'll catch you guys tomorrow morning. We'll fire this thing up. Hopefully it sounds good. Check for leaks, all that stuff. And then we'll hopefully take this thing for its first real drive other than just backing out of the garage. Catch you guys tomorrow.
A few moments later.
Well, it's been a few hours. Yard work's done. It's dark out. Car's down. I can't wait anymore. Let's see how it sounds. Hopefully we don't wake the baby. All of our gauges are working, including the wideband. We've got good oil pressure, pulling a vacuum. Fuel pressure is 30-ish PSI. Wideband's reading. Exhaust sounds good. Woo! I'm gonna continue with dyno prep, which will be in the next video, but hopefully, with any luck, tomorrow morning, we'll take this thing for a drive. All right, first attempted drive in the Eat and Swap Marauder. I've already noticed that our steering shaft is dragging on one of the header primaries a little bit. Right there. So that's good, but let's just take this thing down the road, see what it does. First drive in God knows how long. Dry rotted tires, questionable brakes. The Eat and Swap Marauder is alive. We've got gears, that's 3. Do we have 4? Not yet. Oh, there's 4 actually. Maybe. There's 40 miles an hour. Alright, you guys know the deal. Go down the road real quick, make sure nothing's on fire. This car rides so smooth. And we'll take it back to the house, double check everything. All of our gauges work. Woo! Even the brakes work. I think I love this exhaust already. It's perfect. It's not too loud when you're just cruising and you get on it. Oh, she gets really loud. Oh, love it. Watch out, squirrel. Woo. Nothing on fire. Header might be self-clearancing itself, so that's okay. Cool with that. No leaks. It did rain for the first time in forever last night, so we got some water coming off the non-existent fender liners, but good. Staying cool. All vitals look good. Let's keep going. Also, right after I shut the camera off, we hit 4th gear and locked the converter, so all that seems good. Let's keep driving. Look at that. What a sight. Maybe we never put a hood back on this car. Woo! Forgot my tripod. I was gonna get you guys some exhaust clips. She is rowdy. Thought a set of straight through mufflers would be a little bit rowdy. It's all right. Oh man, it feels good to be driving this thing. What an absolute boat. This thing is a couch going down the road. Zero bolster support. Taking a gradual corner at 45, almost slid into the next zip code, but that's what being a grandpa is all about. I guess it doesn't hurt that we more than doubled probably the factory horsepower that this thing had, you know, when it rolled off the assembly line. But I'm cool with this, guys. All of our vitals are good. Everything seems to be working. The car drives with one hand on the wheel. Very comfortable, good oil pressure, no overheating. We're running about 190 all day. That is, so far, that is about as good as you can ask a first test drive to go. I think we're ready for the dyno. We'll see. Still a lot of unknowns here. I was up till 1 a.m. last night and then up at 6 again this morning and really didn't sleep in between those pre-dyno day jitters. But we'll see. But that's going to be in the next video, which I've already started filming. So stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you are ready to see this thing put down some numbers, maybe do some burnouts if we're lucky, start ripping this grandpa car. Give the video a thumbs up and I'll catch you in the next one.